According to Constantine Porphyrogenitus, Serbs came to Dalmatia led by an archont. The Byzantine title of the archont has several meanings. In Greek language, it can refer to an officer in the Byzantine army, ruler of a small Byzantine administrative area, archontia, as well as the leader of a people. Theophanes, Byzantine early 9th century chronicler, always used the word archont for the chieftains of Slavic tribes. This Greek term with multiple meanings obscures the Slavic term for their rulers. Later Latin writer, the priest of Duklja, in his Annals, used terms already out of date for his time, speaking of the titles of the rulers of Zahumlje, Serbia, Travunia and Duklja. He always referred to them as kings, reges. However, when discussing the late 11th century, the priest of Duklja emphasizes that King Bodin, after conquering Bosnia, installed there Duke Stephen. He calls the ruler of Zahumlje princeps. By using Latin and Greek terms for Serb rulers, Latin and Greek writers cover the original Slavic titles. Constantine Porphyrogenitus claims that, besides archonts, Serbs were also ruled by župans. These were probably king leaders, since he calls them ancient župans, stressing that they belonged to ancient kin groups. It is known that later, during the Middle Ages, Serb's supreme leader was the Grand Župan. It is unclear whether this was ruler's actual title at the time of the arrival of the Serbs. The title of Župan is also present among other Slavic peoples. There were Župans in Bulgaria who had military and government role. The same title was encountered by Hungars, who in 896 settled among the Slav tribes in Pannonia. Župans are mentioned in many inscriptions and documents among Croats as well. It is assumed that the word is of Avar origin, but was transmitted into Avar language from the Indo-European linguistic heritage. In German language, the word Gau, county, is derived from the word Geupa, Župa. This indicates that the word Župa does not have to be of Avar origin, but it could be Indo-European, a heritage that was shared by Slavs as well. The supreme title of the Serb ruler might have meant originally Lord, Serbian Gospodar, because in Old Persian, Gospandar denotes the one who has many sheep. That is to say, a rich and respectable man. Another possibility is the Slav title Knez, whose origin is not known. It was earlier assumed that it was derived from the German König. However, here it also seems that we have an ancient Indo-European term, which developed independently among Germans and among Slavs, and originally stood for the supreme tribal leader. No matter what was the original Serbian title of the chieftain, the nature of his rule and the way of his government is much more important. Constantine Porphyrogenitus claims that Serbs settled in the lands of Serbia, Pagania, Zahumlje, Duklja and Travunia. At the time of his writing, these lands were politically separate dukedoms. However, the emperor's impression was that the inhabitants of these dukedoms were Serbs. In other words, the inhabitants of these provinces felt that they belonged to the Serbian tribe. In the early Middle Ages, it was not unusual for some barbarian tribes to form several states. Goths were quite early divided into Ostrogoths and Visigoths. Ostrogoths founded their kingdom in Italy and Visigoths in Spain. After settling in Italy, Langobards established their kingdom in the north, but there were two more dukedoms, Benevent and Spoleto, in southern Italy. Their interests were frequently in conflict to the interests of the Langobard kingdom, and they could even find themselves on opposing sides during military conflicts. Bulgarians, who established their state in 680, remained separated from the rest of their tribe, which lived north of the river Danube, the so-called Pannonian Bulgarians, with whom they will unite only at the beginning of the 9th century. Therefore, there was nothing unusual for a tribe or a people to create several states during the early Middle Ages. The nature of the terrain, geography, political circumstances, as well as several other factors led to such a development. We could reconstruct the area settled by Serbs with a great degree of certainty. Beginning from the west, the border was probably from the rivers Vrbas or Una, through the present-day western Bosnia, ending in the middle flow of Cetina, leaving Duvno and Livno within the borders of Croatia. From Cetina, it went through Dalmatian hinterlands all the way to the Skadar Lake. From there, northeast towards Metohija, continuing along the river Ibar to the east to Zvečan, from where it winded north and followed the flow of Ibar. From western Morava, it continued to the north until the river Sava to the west of Belgrade. Geographically, this is a remarkably heterogeneous space. Communication between east and west is quite difficult, as there are no major river valleys in this direction. In the beginning of the 7th century, this area was, in a civilizational sense, completely destroyed. There were no towns, mining and crafts were dead, so that this large territory was, most likely, poorly inhabited. In the 11th century, during the passage of the Crusaders through what is today northern Serbia, there are accounts of large oak forests covering these lands. The city of Ravno, today's Ćuprija, was in the middle of the dense oak forest. The Serb settlement was reduced to areas which promised good living conditions. These are specific areas, župas, fertile valleys rich in waterways, surrounded by hills and naturally secluded. That is why regionalism was pronounced among Serbs from an early date. Byzantine writers in the 12th century noted that Serbia is a country crisscrossed by mountains and geographically heterogeneous.